These remarkable dams play a vital role in supplying water, generating power, and ensuring the stability of entire regions. Join me as we rank the top 15 highest capacity dams in the world, starting with number 15, the Serra de Mesa Dam in Brazil. It's originally known as São Felix. The Serra da Mesa Hydroelectric Dam crosses the Tocantins River in the Brazilian state of Goiás and is around 125 miles from the country's capital of Brasilia. It was completed in 1998 at an estimated cost of around $1.1 billion, and with electricity production of up to 1,200 megawatts, it immediately became a vital part of Brazil's energy production network. Energy was the prime reason for building this dam, but there was also the need for improved water management along the river too, to reduce flooding and provide clean water. So to do this, it was designed in a way that would create the largest capacity artificial lake in Brazil. The earth-filled embankment dam structure itself measures 4,900 feet long and is 505 feet tall and has amazingly formed a reservoir with a surface area of over 680 square miles, with a water capacity of just over 44 million square feet. Covering such a huge area, this reservoir hasn't been without its controversy, having been criticized for destroying a number of ancient archaeological sites and also flooding more than $15 million worth of timber that hadn't been removed. But the energy and water security that the reservoir now provides, along with other opportunities like fishing, water sports, and creation of new aquatic ecosystems, means these sacrifices are widely seen as being worth it. Number 14. Cahora Bassa Dam, Mozambique. Built across the Zambezi River as it passes through Mozambique towards the ocean, the Cahora Bassa Dam is a hugely important infrastructure project in the region. Plans were first put in place when the country was still under the rule of the Portuguese colonial government in 1969, and construction was complete by 1974 when water first began to build up. Measuring up to 994 feet wide and 561 feet tall, it creates the Cahora Bassa Lake, which with a surface area of over 1,000 square miles has capacity for 45 million acre-feet. A huge lake like this was needed because the idea was for the dam to be a major electricity supplier to South Africa, and the pressure it holds back can be used to produce over 2,000 megawatts through the dam's 5 turbines. This has proven crucial to South America and Mozambique's energy needs, but it came at a cost. Many thousands of residents were forcefully evicted by the Portuguese colonial government to provide accommodation for workers on the project, and so that the land could be flooded, and this would immediately lead to a number of attempts of sabotage against the power cables that were installed. Following Mozambique's independence, the country would only gain an 18% stake in the dam's operating company, with Portugal retaining the other 82%, and this would remain a source of friction between the two nations until 2007, when the majority of Portuguese shares were sold to the Mozambique government. Number 13. Zhiguli Hydroelectric Station, Russia. The Zhiguli Hydroelectric Station, which is on the Volga River in Russia, is a hydroelectric power project that's been instrumental in the development of that part of the country for more than 70 years. Named after the nearby Zhiguli Mountains, work began on building it in the 1950s, and it was fully operational by 1957 after using forced labor. This in itself was a significant accomplishment during the Soviet era, supporting heavy industry in the Volga region, but it was its mountainous location that made it an ideal place for a dam. That's because there's a lot of naturally formed banks for the rising waters, and this meant that a huge amount can be stored there. The earth-filled structure is 9,200 feet long and 171 feet high, and it's led to the formation of the enormous Kubyshev Reservoir, which has a surface area of over 2,400 square miles and a capacity of up to 13.7 cubic miles of water. The dam itself is so big that engineers needed to build a series of locks that pass through it, so it was still possible to trade up and down the river. And it is often a surreal sight seeing a transport vessel traveling over the side. While the dam was initially built to provide power to the surrounding area and maintain constant water flow, the wider energy grid has been substantially improved since the mid-1950s. Today, the power generation is instead used to cover peak loads and help maintain frequency stability in Russia's power network. Number 12. Boguchany Dam Russia. After beginning construction in 1974, the monumental Boguchany Dam project was finally completed in 2015, by which time an 8,400-foot-long and 315-foot-tall gravity and rock-filled barrier had been built across the Angara River near to the town of Kodinsk in Siberia, Russia. Originally seeming like a relatively easy project, financial issues along with a number of unexpected engineering challenges due to the water flow in the region meant that things took far longer than was expected. But the result was a hydroelectric facility that produces up to 3,000 megawatts of electricity and a vast reservoir that has a surface area of 898 square miles. As a part of the larger Boguchany Energy and Metals Complex, it now is a hugely important part of Russia's energy grid, and eventually it will be used to provide power to a newly built aluminum smelter in the region that will be one of the largest of its kind in the world when it's completed. Rather than relying on a continual flow of water, though, the reservoir and ultimately the hydroelectric plant is reliant on water flowing along the Angara River that either comes from Lake Baikal, which is the largest natural lake on Earth, or from 3 other dam-controlled reservoirs. Depending on the conditions at those sites, there can be a huge differential in the amount of water flow through the year, which is one of the reasons the project set out to create such a large reservoir here, because it would be able to hold enough to continue operating no matter what happens elsewhere. Number 11. Bourassa Dam, Canada. The Bourassa Dam, which is on the La Grande River in northern Quebec, Canada, is part of a huge energy project in the region, fulfilling Canada's commitment to clean energy production and resource management. Named after the former premier of Quebec, Bourassa, this dam is a crucial part of the James Bay Project, which is one of the largest hydroelectric systems in the world. Measuring 9,300 feet long and reaching up to 531 feet high, it's filled with glacial moraine, which creates a virtually impervious barrier. This holds the Bourassa Reservoir, which has a surface area of 1,095 square miles and contains a maximum capacity of 50 million acre-feet of water. It was completed in 1981, and once the reservoir was full, there was an interesting engineering challenge that in certain times of the year, more water enters the reservoir that can actually pass through the generators. To manage this and keep the water depth at a maximum of 531 feet, 29 dikes and a series of spillways were installed to release the excess when needed. Now that it's had time to establish, the reservoir has become a stunning area of natural beauty too, with a vibrant ecosystem that not only provides water to the hydroelectric plant, but also stores fresh water for use by local communities, which has supercharged the region's economy and more than justified the 3.8 billion Canadian dollars it cost to build. Number 10. The Zeya Dam Russia. Sat across the Zeya River near to the town of Zeya, which is in the far east of Russia, near to the border with China, is the Zeya Dam, a huge concrete arch structure that measures 4,200 feet long and up to 379 feet high. Built between 1965 and 1975, its hydroelectric generators are able to produce up to 1,300 megawatts of electricity, which is a vital resource to the region that in many ways is separated from the rest of the country. In fact, more than half of Far East Russia's power comes from this facility, and neighboring parts of China also rely on it. It was a practically perfect place to build a dam too, because of the topography of the area, where the Zeya River twists and turns through several mountain ranges. Upstream from the dam is a narrow 25-mile-long valley, and then there's the main body of the huge Zeya Reservoir that the project created in a larger natural valley. With a surface area of 934 square miles, its depth is maintained at 305 feet. And since entering operation, the Zeya Dam has been crucial in the development of this part of Russia, which is often overlooked when infrastructure projects are being planned. Beyond simply providing power to communities, there are now 6 settlements on the shores of the reservoir that benefit from the fish in the waters, and it also supports industrial plants that are responsible for processing some of the world's largest gold deposits that are found nearby. Number 9. Krasnoyarsk Dam Russia. Alright, we're staying in Russia, and while hydroelectric dams may be able to produce huge amounts of water, there are some industrial processes that require a lot too. So amazingly, even though the Krasnoyarsk Dam creates enough to supply several cities, the majority of its energy production goes to just one place, the Krasnoyarsk aluminum plant. Built between 1956 and 1972 across the Yenisei River in Siberia and around 19 miles upstream from the city from which it takes its name, the dam is a concrete gravity dam that measures 3,400 feet long and 407 feet high. With 10 turbines, it's able to produce up to 6,000 megawatts of electricity, and it held the title for being the largest power plant in the world for 12 years. Behind it is the Krasnoyarsk Reservoir, which is also informally known as the Krasnoyarsk Sea, and it had an enormous effect on the region. With a surface area of 770 square miles, it's got a capacity of up to 18 cubic miles of water, reaching a maximum depth of 344 feet. Flooding an area like this, of course, has an impact, but this dam in particular has changed the environment in a more fundamental way than many others. Before it was built, the Yenisei River would routinely freeze each year during the winter, but that doesn't happen anymore. Because the dam is designed to release unfrozen water all year round, there's approximately a 190-mile stretch of the river that's downstream of the dam that never freezes. Instead, the cold air and warmer water combine in the winter months to produce a thick fog that descends over the region and has subsequently forced countless animals and communities to change their lifestyles. Its construction also blocked an important trade route for ships carrying supplies to cities, and the only way to solve this was by building a ship lift within the dam itself. Able to carry ships weighing up to 1,500 tons, it's not technically a lift, but an electric rack railway that actually has the widest gauge of any railway in the world, at almost 30 feet or 9 meters. It takes around 90 minutes to carry a vessel from one side to the other, but this is much better than trying to find an alternative route that would extend journey to their destinations by weeks. Number 8. W.A.C. Bennett Dam, Canada. The W.A.C. Bennett Dam, which crosses the Peace River in British Columbia, Canada, is a huge hydroelectric power facility that was named after the former Premier of British Columbia, W.A.C. Bennett, because of his involvement in funding the project to build it. Construction began in the 1960s and was finished in 1968, and with an earth-filled design, it measures 6,700 feet long and 610 feet high, making it one of the largest of its type in the world. Within it are 10 turbines that can produce up to 2,900 megawatts of electricity and provides around a third of the total power demands of British Columbia. This site was chosen because this part of the Peace River is where it converges with two others, the Finley and Parsnip, all of which now feed into the reservoir that was formed behind the dam, that's called Williston Lake. Backing up into a valley known as the Rocky Mountain Trench and covering the lower parts of the floodplains of all three main rivers, there's a further 8 smaller rivers and creeks that feed into it as well, and have formed the 8th largest man-made reservoir in the world. With a surface area of 680 square miles, it holds 60 million acre-feet of water, with an average depth of 138 feet. Since opening, the dam has provided energy security for the region, and it's created a number of opportunities for tourism in the area, which has boosted the economy too. But despite these benefits, there was a major downside and controversy with its construction. Several communities, many of whom had lived there for hundreds, if not thousands of years, were either forcibly relocated or found that, after the lake had formed, they were cut off and isolated. Despite being finished in 1968, the Canadian government settled one of the claims as recently as 2016. 350,000 acres of forested land was destroyed by flooding too, and there's now also the possibility that the lake sits above hugely valuable mineral deposits that now, because of the lake, are no longer retrievable. Moving on to number 7, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Ethiopia. Due to their extreme cost and the huge amount of land that's required for them, dams aren't built as often anymore as they were during the 20th century. There is one project that's currently underway though, and even though it's not yet finished, it already has created the 7th largest capacity reservoir on Earth. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which is more commonly known as the GERD, is located on the Blue Nile River in Ethiopia. And it's one of the most ambitious and controversial infrastructure projects on the African continent. Construction began in 2011, and it's continuously been a source of contention, not just because of the amount of land that's been flooded, but because of the concerns about the impact on water flow to downstream countries like Sudan and Egypt. Both countries rely heavily on the waters of the Nile River, and the construction of the dam has led to these tense negotiations over water rights. GERD, though, will potentially bring substantial benefits to Ethiopia because of the electricity it will produce and the water management benefits it will bring. So despite causing friction with neighboring countries, the project has been proceeding to plan. The Gravity Dam, which is around 9 miles to the east of the country's border with Sudan, measures about 5,800 feet long and 476 feet high. And when it's fully operational, will have 13 generators to give a maximum production of 5,100 megawatts. To enable this, it's created a reservoir within a valley behind the dam that's currently expected to take a few more years to completely fill, but once it does, it will have covered a surface area of 724 square miles and have the capacity for up to 60 million acre-feet of water. The reservoir will, at its longest, be 153 miles and reach a maximum depth of 460 feet. But despite these huge numbers, it will only be the 4th largest artificial body of water in Africa. Number 6. The Aswan High Dam, Egypt. The Nile River, it's been the life source for civilization in Egypt for thousands of years. But as the population and demand for water has expanded, the cycle of flood seasons and dry seasons has been increasingly difficult. To overcome this problem, designs for a new dam were drawn up in the 1950s, and the Aswan High Dam was built between 1960 and 1970. Built on a site near the city of Aswan, it became the tallest earthen dam in the world once it was completed, and it measures 12,570 feet long and 364 feet high, and impressively 3,200 feet wide at its base. It wasn't actually the first dam to have been built in this area, with the earliest attempt taking place in the 11th century. But this was by far the largest to have been attempted and majorly improved the Egyptian economy and water management. There's a power plant in it that produces 2,100 megawatts, but by far the most important thing it was designed to do was reduce flooding further down the Nile and build up a store of water that could be released during the months or years that it's needed during dry spells. Unlike many other reservoirs that are created, huge efforts were made to protect the rich archaeological history in the land that was flooded, and it holds part of the UNESCO Nubia campaign. 22 monuments and complexes were either moved to the shores or New Lake, or gifted to countries and cities that assisted in the dam's construction. The finished thing is undoubtedly an incredibly effective structure, but not one without any drawbacks. Its presence has reduced the flow of silt further down the river, which has resulted in the coastline being eroded more quickly, and instead, the silt is being deposited at the dam. This means that eventually the dam will become blocked and will need to be completely demolished to restore water flow. But it's expected to have at least 200 years of operational lifespan before this becomes a concern. Number 5. The Guri Dam, Venezuela. The enormous Guri Dam, which is also known as the Simon Bolivar Hydroelectric Power Plant, is one of the most important power generation facilities in Venezuela. It's located on the Caroni River in the southeastern part of the country. Feasibility studies were first conducted into the project in the early 1960s, and it was built between 1963 and 1978. Measuring 4.6 miles long and 531 feet high, it's a gravity embankment dam that has 21 turbines to produce up to 10,000 megawatts of electricity, which is around the amount it would take to be needed to support a city with 10 million people. Despite the size of the dam itself, the biggest visible effect of it is the Guri Reservoir that was created behind it, covering an area of 1,600 square miles. It has the capacity to hold as much as 110 million acre-feet of water. At first, the energy production and provision of stable water supply to the region was hailed as a success, but the demand for power had continued to increase. A further upgrade project took place in the 80s to upgrade it and the size of the reservoir, and another took place in the early 2000s to extend its lifespan for a further 30 years. Since 2006, thanks to a policy of trying to eliminate reliance on fossil fuels, the dam has been providing around a third of the country's total power needs. But there has been such a shortage of water over the past few years that national blackouts have happened. It is a stark reminder that while hydroelectric dams can be a crucial national resource, they need to be supplemented by other forms of energy production in case nature has other ideas. Number 4. Daniel Johnson Dam, Canada. Made up of 13 buttresses and 13 arches, the Daniel Johnson Dam in Quebec, Canada is one of the more unusual ones you'll ever see. And measuring 4,300 feet long and 700 feet tall, it's by far the largest of its type in the world. It was built between 1959 and 1970 to provide a constant flow of water to two powerhouses that can produce up to 2,600 megawatts, and it was named after the former Premier of Quebec, who was instrumental in getting the project approved. Power provision in this region was particularly important at the time because of a number of large reservoirs of iron had been found, and industrial facilities and communities to support them were growing. The dam itself was built across the Manicouagan River at a point where it flows out of the fifth largest known impact structure in the world, which was formed around 215 million years ago when an asteroid about 3 miles in diameter struck the planet. The resulting crater was originally 62 miles wide, and although this reduced over time to a diameter of about 45 miles, it still is the ideal place to form an artificial lake, which essentially merged two smaller ones that were there before the dam was built. Known as the Manicouagan Reservoir, it now has a surface area of 750 square miles and holds a maximum capacity of 34 cubic miles of water. Amazingly, this also created the second largest lake island in the world, which is actually larger than the lake that it's inside of and is affectionately known as the Eye of Quebec because of how it looks from above. It's been both an important power generator and water management structure, but the dam has also encouraged a tourist industry in the region too. Hundreds of people visit each day to see how it works, and the reservoir, which is filled with Atlantic salmon, lake trout, and northern pike, and it's become an internationally renowned site for fishing too. Number 3. Akosombo Dam, Ghana. The Akosombo Dam, which is also known as the Volta Dam because it sits across the Volta River in southeastern Ghana, was built between 1961 and 1965, and at the time was described as being the largest single investment into the economic investment plan of the country. Originally built and funded to provide power to the aluminum industry, it's an embankment rock-filled design that measures 2,700 feet long and 374 feet high. With 6 turbines, it's able to produce up to 1,000 megawatts of power, and today it's mainly used to provide the majority of energy needs to both Togo and Benin. It's the reservoir behind this dam that's the most impressive. Not only it holds the record for being the largest man-made lake by surface volume, which measures 3,283 square miles, but also takes up 3.6% of Ghana's total land area. Its water capacity is 120 million acre-feet, making it the 3rd largest in the world by volume, and this has allowed the power plants to reliably operate ever since they opened. Of course, a huge amount of land had to be flooded, which required the movement of thousands of people, but this was just the beginning of the problems. Soon after it was filled, there was an unexpected increase in seismic activity in the surrounding area, and the climate also began to change with the lower rainfall and higher temperatures, which affected coastal erosion. The soil surrounding the lake is also less fertile than the land that was flooded, so farmers have needed to use far more fertilizers. The fertilizers have also created the perfect environment for waterborne diseases to thrive in the reservoir, with many more cases of malaria, river blindness, and snail fever now being reported, all of which have increased poverty as opposed to boosting the economy like had been hoped. Money received from exporting the energy is now being invested into trying to reverse these problems, but it could be years or decades until communities begin to benefit from these initiatives. Number 2. Bratsk Dam Russia. Another one in Russia. After approving the plan for its construction in 1954, work began soon after, and the Bratsk Dam was completed by 1967. It's a concrete gravity dam that crosses the Angara River in Russia's Irkutsk Oblast, and was for 5 years the world's largest single power producer. As part of the Angara River Hydroelectric Station Cascade, it measures 3,000 feet long and 408 feet high, and with 18 turbines can produce up to 4,500 megawatts. Providing power to Irkutsk, the nearest city, and supplying most of its needs, around 75% of the energy output, is actually used by the Bratsk aluminum plant, and hundreds of other factories rely on it too. The unique geography in the region meant that for a reasonably sized dam, an enormous lake could be formed, and the Bratsk Reservoir took its place as the 2nd largest man-made lake by volume as soon as it was completed, and it remains in that position today. With a surface area of 2,100 square miles, it's got a maximum capacity of 41 cubic miles of water, which, to put it into perspective, is about the same as the amount of water that would pass over Niagara Falls in 3.5 years. Number 1. Kariba Dam, Zambia, Zimbabwe. The double curvature arched Kariba Dam, which is on the Zambezi River along the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe, was built between 1955 and 1959. Spanning a length of 1,900 feet and reaching up to 420 feet high, the 10 turbines produce about 2,000 megawatts of power. It's nowhere near being the biggest dam that's ever been built, but because of where it was built, the reservoir it formed has the largest capacity of any artificial water mass on the planet. Known as Lake Kariba, it has a surface area of 2,100 square miles and contains up to 43 cubic miles of water. It's so big that within the lake there are 11 islands, and it was filled with waters that contain so many nutrients that there's a vibrant ecosystem in it, with species like the sardine, tigerfish, and Nile crocodiles. Parts of it has also been designated as a recreational park, also as a protected wildlife region, and it's now home to some species that have all but become extinct elsewhere. Measuring 139 miles long and reaching a depth of up to 318 feet, the weight of the water within the lake is so much that it's been linked with dangerous seismic activity in the area. Since being filled, Lake Kariba has been the source of at least 20 earthquakes with a magnitude of more than 5. And it's because of these unpredictable events that the general consensus is now that no dam should ever be built to form reservoirs anywhere near this size again. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you to our channel members.